Hello, everyone. My name is Karthik Kandamuri. I am a YouTuber. I am a concerned citizen of America, and I am very impacted by the happenings in US. I'm an immigrant in this country. I came to this country because when I was growing up in India, I always saw US or the United States of America as the greatest country of the world because of its enterprising nature of people, the you know the value which is given to the institutions, all the institutions like FBI or a CIA. They stick to their integrity, they stick to their principles, and they rule. The rule of the law is always the paramount in this country. However, when I look at myself 20 years into this country, I don't feel that much more optimistic anymore because of the problems which are plaguing this country for many years. You take the recent protests due to the killings, and that has really disappointed me. And I want to now use this forum to meet some experts and understand why is this happening in this country? Why is this country no more uh, leader in the world, moral leader in the world? And I want to talk to experts to get their opinions, elicit their opinions. And this is a public channel, and the channel is called as Enterprising Americans. We are going to get a lot of enterprising Americans who have been very, very successful in their fields, who are experts and thought leaders. Today, my guest is going to be Mr. Jerry Rhodes. Jerry, thank you for accepting my invitation and meeting me today. Please introduce yourself to my audience.
Thank you, Karthik, for having me on. My name is Jerry Rhodes. Background, I'm from Iowa, small town, Indianola, Iowa. Went to a small college in Iowa. Got a job in Chicago with Arthur Andersen, the leading accounting firm in the country, and I'm a CPA. And over the years, I've been involved in healthcare. Some 40, 50 years in healthcare is my specialty. But today, I think we're going to talk about a little broader subject, but also my background is that I'm an author. I have a number of books on healthcare. I got a book called The American Enterprise Manifesto, which refers to a third party. And Karthik and I have developed this relationship, and we want to bring to, through the media, certain ideas that we possess and pretty much agree on.
Thank you, Jerry, for that nice introduction. I'm very excited to talk to you today. Today, I want to start, our topic is going to be the protests which are plaguing this country for the last few weeks. While we have been in the COVID situation where people have lost jobs, people are struggling, and many people have died. Unfortunately, US happens to be the country with majority of the deaths in the country and in the world. And now we are trying to resolve and get out of this crisis, and suddenly these protests have started. Based on the killing of George Floyd, which happened in Minneapolis, and subsequent killings, do you think race has been playing a role in these killings and the resultant protests?
Well, race certainly has played a role. I think that's a symptom. A number of symptoms are being explored right now rather than getting to the problem. And I'm not going to leap there right away because the systems really relate to typically how do people live in the inner city and what they're faced with every day when they walk out of their home, apartment, or whatever. And it's not exactly something that we would approve of. I don't approve of. I think it's a symptom of frustration of not being able to pursue the opportunity that we say that we have. The American dream is just a nightmare because of of what's happening in the inner city. It's collapsing. There isn't any money spent there. We spend a ton of money on going to the moon, weapons of mass destruction, some $3 trillion that we've never, ever, and hopefully never have to use. Regime change has cost us another $3 or $4 trillion. So I think we need to focus in on our cities, inner cities, and our smaller communities in the South where it's principally Black or Hispanic populations. So I think all of the other words are symptoms. The true problem is how we're asking these people to live. And they're not asking for a giveaway. They're looking for hope and opportunity. And I think as we will provide that to them, we'll have to go in somehow, some way, either pay military to go in or engage the community members and the gangs. There's 30,000 gangs in this country. Why don't we employ them to fix up the very same thing that enables them to conduct crime and scare everybody in their community? So the cities, the Chicago's, Baltimore, Detroit, LA, Miami, you know who they are. They all have this dilapidation in their inner city. And what are they spending on it? Zero. And there's slum landlords, and there's not the kind of small business entrepreneurship development there that we have to have if we're ever going to get by saying it's racism or it's the police fault, or those are symptoms. We're going to end up killing each other in a Black Matters revolt unless we start to realize half of the police department, 65%, are Black and Hispanic. So we're talking about something other than racism here. And
that's a great segue, great point. So what you're saying is you have listed out three aspects. One is, we have spent trillions of dollars on changing regimes across the world, whether you take Korea, whether you take, Cuba, you take Iraq, and we've gone to wars in Afghanistan. But what you're saying is we have not spent enough money on developing infrastructure, education, and clean up the inner cities and reduce the poverty by introducing small businesses. That's a great point. But the second point I also like, Jerry, is the fact that majority of the police organizations are either Black or Hispanic. So
yes.
if we as a country don't take care of these communities, we are creating a recipe for disaster for all of us, because we are not going to be secure in this country. Now, coming to inner city, and there's a lot of talk about community policing. So in your opinion, to start with the basics of, let's say we invest some money in the inner city and we change the current police system to a community policing, what do you think should the police forces be doing to gain the trust of the inner city folks, to turn them against the gangs, and to encourage and motivate them to educate themselves and get into jobs?
Well, first of all, I like to make the point that America is a culture of violence, vulgarity, and excess at this point. I believe that's an underlying problem. To answer the question about community policing, we need to go away from enforcement. Civil disobedience triggers escalation, triggers these needless killings. We need to go to a reinforcement program. And I'm not talking rehabbing criminals. I'm talking about reinforce with our community policemen, which would be the police as they now exist. But they would be helping the community solve problems, not getting there after the problem and then trying to solve it, because that escalates everything. I see no justification for the killing in Atlanta or New York or Philadelphia or Detroit or Minneapolis, none, because it was an escalation of fear on one side and dominance on the other side. And we have to change that culture. America throughout the country it's a culture of violence. All you see on Netflix and the entertainment and vulgarity. Now, am I preaching a sermon here? No. I think most of us have to admit that we got to clean up our approach to democracy, because otherwise we're going to have a revolution. The Black Lives Matter will evolve into a black or white or whatever revolution to change our government to, I believe, the wrong thing, because we're moving more to socialism. That giving government more control will make it worse.
Right.
They create problems. The lawmakers create laws with problems.
Right. That's a great point. So what you're saying is, right now, the protests are caused by Black Lives Matter, and they will soon turn into All Lives Matter. And but you brought a great point. America is a culture of violence. It's a culture. It's a culture of violence and vulgarity, whether it's in movies, whether it's everywhere. Do you think guns are playing a major role in this? Number one, that's the first question. The second question is, the Second Amendment says that you cannot, everybody can own a gun. Don't you think that's an excess of, if you want to have a gun which is for protecting oneself, but you should not be, as a country, selling
Right.
weapons grade war-like guns which are used in guns. I mean, do you really need those kind of guns in the country? And do you think that is playing into this problem?
Okay, let's go with the symptom again. 1776, whenever they did, and then in the 30s or 40s when they started doing amendments, the First Amendment being interpreted today is you really, if you strictly interpret it, can say anything and do anything, even though it hurts somebody.
Right.
On the media. And the Second Amendment, there are 300 million guns in this country. Every person supposedly has a gun. I don't believe I need to protect myself right now. But with this rioting and all of that, everybody's going to be shooting everyone else. Now, is that going to solve any problems? No. Okay, what should we do? Well, you've said it already. We should limit the sale of military weapons to the military. Wherever they're found out in the public would be a capital offense. And they're going to have to deal with it that way. Because we can't have everybody with Uzis and mortars and all that, because then we're Iraq or Syria or whatever. And the tearing down of these statues is just another symptom of the frustration and the fear and the hatred that's, deep bedded in this country. We are having the second Civil War, and it's ridiculous.
Right.
Because I don't want it, you don't want it. We're of all colors.
Right.
Protesters are half white.
Right.
So there's something here about the fact that our governing leadership has to have a makeover and focus in on problem solving. Everybody talks issues. Everybody, instead of problems and solutions, we're talking issues between the red and the blue and the left and the right and the liberals and the conservatives. Come on, give me a tissue about that. They never get to the problem. Reform is stalling till it goes away. Every shooting in a school and every shooting in these cities is forgotten because they stall. Chicago stalled McDonald. They had the video for a year and a half, bought it from the person that took the video, buried it, paid the family $5 million to avoid having riots, and the guy got 7 years, 2 years off for good behavior in the jail. That's wrong. That's not the rule of law. We have the golden rule here. Those with the gold will rule. And right now, the whites are ruling. And it's with a two-party system that are always supposedly can't agree on anything, and it's get Trump out so we can get Biden in. And what have we done? We furthered our country to failure.
So I think the biggest thing would be that whichever party comes into the power, whichever party is in the power, the fact that we don't need weapons which can be used in wars. Why do we need for protecting ourselves against whom? Number one. Number two,
ourselves.
But looks like we need guns to protect against ourselves because we are not investing. So if somebody comes to a school and shoots and does shooting and kills few kids, unfortunate innocent kids, instead of really stopping the guns, if we weaponize the security system or weaponize the teachers, are we not creating problems even more? Rather than trying to see, why do we need guns to young kids? Why do we need to? So instead of educating our kids, we are trying to get them more into the culture, more into the violent culture of protecting themselves. This is not the right way, I think, to go ahead as a nation.
No, absolutely not. We have to go to culture. The culture in schools is violent and vulgar. The F word is in every other word.
Yes.
It's on the screen everywhere you go. It's replaced he or she. So it's a culture of violence in the schools. What does that create? Creates hate among students. The ones that hate the most are the ones that get a gun and go in and not just want themselves on TV. They're getting revenge.
Right.
That's what Black Lives Matter is all about. Get revenge. But it's really black and white revenge against our leadership. At this point, I believe that it has to be recognized we have to stop talking issues and talk problems, root cause of the problem, and work on solutions and fund that, not throwing away money on and judge our country by the stock market score.
Right. That's a great point. That's a great segue you made. When the whole country is suffering through this pandemic and more than 100,000 people died and number of cases are still spiking across the country, and anybody looking from outside the country will say, hey, 40 million people have lost jobs. People are still dying. We don't have good hospitals. But how is it stock market doing so well? Isn't it stock market reflection of the economy? In this case, it's counterintuitive. What do you think about it?
Well, first of all, you go back to what is the problem. It isn't the pandemic. It's the fear factor that was built around the pandemic, which started in China. And guess why they would have a fear factor on their agenda against America? Well, they want to be the leader in the world. So what have they done? They've infected us with fear, not COVID-19. This is the 19th version of it. Never have found a vaccine since 1918. Fauci, the guy that's leading this, I believe, is not practicing science at all. When we practice negative science, trying to get to a positive result, what do we get? A shutdown of our whole economy. Only with the essential people, and most of those 22 million are government workers. They all got paid everything. They have the best pay. They have the best benefits. They have best health care. And yeah, it's our policemen and our firemen. Hey, we probably underpay them, but they've got full pensions that we haven't even put on the books. The government doesn't even record these obligations. So really, to get to the very bottom line of this is that we have to deal with problem and root cause of the problem.
But right. So sorry to chime in there, but the counter argument to what you're saying is that if we some of the new states, for instance, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, all of these states were under shutdown mode, and then now states like Georgia, Florida, New Mexico, Oklahoma, I love South Carolina and North Carolina, all these states, when they have opened up, now the number of cases are spiking. So I think we are it's like a pick your poison. Either you lock down and destroy the economy, or open up and get more people killed. I think the medium would be for people to maintain social distancing, wear masks, and go with your lives, because we don't, until we have a vaccine, we cannot be at home. So you cannot shut down. At the same time, you have to maintain some rules of the engagement and start going ahead with the life. Looks like that's what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go back to the problem here. Is it the pandemic or is it the fear? You have to isolate where the risk is. I own nursing homes. I've been in healthcare 50 years. We needed to do triage. Triage takes you to where the worst of the problem is. It's in nursing homes. It's in older people that have underlying chronic diseases. 125 million people in this world have so-called chronic diseases. It is our unhealthy America that we got to deal with. That's the problem, because 90% of the people that get it get over it. We're designing a system here of 30,000 ventilators in New York, and you can't even get a ventilator in a nursing home because the government won't let you. It's all a facade. Our health of this nation is terrible. So yeah, we have to do that on risk analysis, not on bending the curve and the number of deaths and the number of cases and the number of tests and the number of It's insanity.
Right.
We've closed down the very thing that will save us.
Right. Actually, you brought up a you got
I
up a
call it
great.
quack science.
Yeah, go ahead. You came up with a great point. So if you look at from a third party outsider perspective, now we have an unhealthy nation with a lot of people with chronic diseases, maybe because of lifestyle, maybe because of the habits and all that, lack of exercise, lack of good food, lifestyle diseases. Number one, we have the highest number of guns which is in the country, a violent culture, vulgar culture, education standards are going down. So what do you think we should do? So it looks like both the parties have failed the country. It looks like, what do you think will be the solution if you were to give an if we were to because if we put ourselves in a voter's perspective, we don't like what Republicans are doing. At the same time, we don't like what Democrats are doing. So what are the options? This is like we talked about autocracy and democracy. Autocracy is one party system, democracy is two party system. Looks like this is democracy with limited options. There are only two
Yes.
party system in this country, and both of them are failing. Where do we go as a citizens?
Well, again, going to the problem being that the two parties are now growing together and they just argue, they're polarized. It's for design. It's called the golden rule. The folks with the gold rule, they rule the budget. The budget's a disaster. We're bankrupt. If we recorded all of our obligations, we couldn't pay our obligations. And this pandemic, we shouldn't pay China what we owe them. We owe them $3 trillion. Fine, that's the exact amount you cost us for the pandemic. We have to start managing the finance of this country. You cannot just keep spending in $9 trillion invested in this pandemic, which I believe will be shown as a quack science, since we didn't focus in on the statistical probabilities and where the risk was and manage it that way. We let the governors who don't know healthcare do their thing, panic. And on the task force, Trump gave it to Vice President Pence, who's pretty much a bureaucrat, and he had all bureaucrats on there telling us what to do. Didn't have any healthcare people. The HHS secretary wasn't even on there. I couldn't get in the door. And I have tons of experience with nursing homes to tell them, anytime you send a patient from the hospital with pneumonia to a nursing home and they can't take care of them, they're going to die. Well, that's what the COVID was. It's pneumonia. It's an extreme form of pneumonia. And no one even mentioned that we have pneumonia vaccine, we have flu vaccine. Why aren't we inoculating all the people with that? Because the agenda is fear. And the agenda is being used by the Institute of Health, the World Health Organization, and CDC to cover their you-know-what, because they haven't found anything that solves anything. And we're putting private enterprise on it because they can't get anything done. So, now we're stuck with all these masks and all these ventilators and all these hospital beds that are not being utilized. They just cost us a ton of money, made China a ton of money, and put us in jeopardy for who's going to be the leaders in this country. Well, we need a third party. We need somebody to represent the 40% independents and the 169 enterprising Americans who work every day that pay all the bills, not Bill Gates paying them. They pay all the bills.
Right.
Including getting Bill Gates rich. So this is not a labor party. This isn't a communist party. This is an enterprising party representing the enterprising Americans in this country that are not represented. You can't call your senator or your legislative in any state and get by. It's all the golden rule. And so somehow, some way, with this middle of the road representation, we can take 8 or 10 seats in the Senate and 8 or 20 seats in the House, even in the legislatures in the different states, and be the swing vote. That 40% independence in this country can be the swing vote. And when the swing vote is controlling things, the extremes come closer to the middle. We get rid of all this harebrained stuff of free this and green that and get with solving problems.
That's a great point, except that, okay, let me come with a counter argument to that. So what you're saying is, I completely agree, both the parties, they have not been effective in solving the problems which are plaguing the nation. However, and then the very fact that we need to take the independents and make them get elected, we need to make about 10-15 swing selectors, yeah, senators and the members of the house who can swing the votes, be the independents in the Senate. So what you're talking about is not just independents in voters, but independents in the congressmen, whether it's senators or
Yes.
House of Representatives. However, don't you think that has not worked in the past? You take the Libertarian Party, you take Green Party, both of them couldn't make a real dent in the electorate. So why do you think this new party will work? Is it because the timing? Is it because the frustration? What do you think will be the driver for this enterprising party?
Well, those other parties didn't have a platform. The Liberation or the Reform Party, the Tea Party, they didn't have a platform. This party has a published platform. It's in my book, but it has a complete platform which deals with problem solving. I'm not saying government's going to do it. I'm saying real people do the problem solving. We create the policies. You got to get the lawmaker tag off of those guys, because they make laws because that's what they get paid for. We had 40,000 laws in 2010 passed across the country. Everyone takes away our freedom. We have to fund the damn things. $250 billion a year of funding new laws. Why don't we take laws off the books? Why don't we start to focus in on what today is, not what yesterday was, so these guys can control us? And all they do is have committee meetings and argue and get nowhere on issues. This deals with problems. The first step is to a platform is what are the problems? And I'm telling you, within the American Enterprise Party as it stands now, and I don't have many members, there's a platform. What is it? Everybody gets an education. Everybody gets a trade. Everybody gets to be able to own a home. Everybody has a vote that counts. It's within this concept you can have, and I don't call anything free. You cannot say we're giving education to everybody, college it to everyone. Not everyone wants it or could use it. We have to focus whatever we're doing with our money on education, on improving the results. In the inner city, 70%, or no, almost 90% of the students don't graduate.
Right.
What happens to them? They're gangs. They're in the gangs. They're wanting to be a basketball player, a football player, something like that. And what are we doing? In our society, we glorify. We pay Tom Brady $40 million a year, or Tiger Woods, or Michael Jordan. It's a country of excess.
It's a great point. That's a great point.
What really counts?
Yeah, that's a great point. I met one of a professor, a marketing professor, one of the universities in a airport one of the time, and he is a marketing professor. He's supposed to teach marketing, and he was flying to Nashville to meet a football player to come and play for his university. He says, I don't like this because instead of focusing on education in the university, today universities are becoming like, who has the best football team in the country? They will be where they will have students, rather than who has the opportunity, best jobs, who are getting out of the university. And he says it's ironic that being a marketing professor, he's trying to market to the football players to come and join the university group, and then they'll pay millions of dollars instead of spending on new college, new buildings, and new infrastructure. Yep. So I think you hit on the right point. I think we are running out of the time, Jerry. It was great talking to you, but here is what we should be doing. Now that you've laid the foundation of this thought process, that these two-party system is not working, and we need to bring a new party into the mix, which can swing the policy decisions towards the thing towards solving a problem rather than endlessly debating and spending all the money. So I think what we should do is we will regroup again. This is a great conversation we had. I want to now focus in the next set of videos on each topic, each problem we have. You talked about education, you talk about community policing, you talk about opportunity for inner city people, opportunity for poor, managing finances of this country rather than just printing the bills. And so we will take each of these topics in our future videos, and we will focus in on each of the topics with a clear plan. And how does that plan contrast with the current policies of either parties? This will be a bipartisan discussion. We will identify a problem. We'll identify what are some of the current policies are saying, and how are we going to tackle that if we were given an opportunity. I think that would be a great forum for people to discuss and look at our point of view and go from there. I really appreciate your time. I hope to again set up this video again with you. It was a great conversation with you.
Well, thank you. I do want to give a commercial for my book, because I do believe in having things in printed form, and it's committed me after my 60 years in business. 40 of those years I had my own business, and I'm an entrepreneur. And my dad worked in the union and for Firestone, and Firestone suffered the loss of their business because they changed their quality control standards, and the steel belted tire put them in Japanese hands. And that's going to happen with China if we're not careful. But the book is the American Enterprise Manifesto. Don't let the word manifesto scare you off. I'm not promoting a revolution. I'm only promoting a change in the way we think on certain things. Am I an expert politician? Hell no. I think we have to have more people get involved that are just experts in what they do. Most of these senators and congressmen are Harvard graduates, lawyers, attorneys. They're not common folk. They're used to the golden rule. So I am pitching this being the constitutional-based party for at least 40% of the voters.
That's
and 169 million enterprising Americans.
That's a great point, because I think one of the problems which plagues this country during elections is half of the people are not motivated to go and vote. Half of the people don't even register to vote, and they don't even if they register by force or by whatever campaign, they don't really go and vote. I think we need to get more participation of people into this in the country, in the electoral process. I think your book will be a great opportunity for people to read and see how they can really make a difference for the whole country. Otherwise, this country is not going in the right direction. I think this is an opportunity for everybody to participate in the votes, in the process, understand what the problems are. Let's solve the problems together. I think that should be the problem we should look at. That should be the motto we should look at.
Amen. I did to that. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jerry. I really appreciate your time today.
Take care.